In this video, we're going to focus on how we can create a checkbox legend here. So you can see here, they will nicely correspond, and then once we check them all again, they will appear again. So let's start to explore how to do this. So let's start to look how we can create a custom legend with checkboxes in Chart.js. So the first thing what we need is to get our default code, which you can find here in chartjs3.com getting started. And this link you can also find in the description box. Then once you scroll down, you copy this entire chunk of code here. And if you want to understand what this code does, make sure you've watched this video here that explains it all. Paste it all in there and then cut this out, or at least for me, I will cut that out, put it in there. Save, refresh. There we are. So now we have our wonderful bar chart, but what we want to do here now is to have checkboxes instead of a basic legend here. To do this, I want to have at least two data sets, so you have two specific checkboxes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy this chunk of code here, put a comma in here, and paste it all in there. And then I'll say here, this will be the black sales. And then I'll just select here the black color. What I do here is also remove the array in here. This is very important for later on, so make sure you do that as well. And here, same story for the background color. Oh, I don't want to do that. I want to remove all of these, including the array. And put that one in there. Make sure you have a comma here. Put that there. Alright. So I'll put upper one here. This should be the red sales because it's the red color. I'm going to delete everything except for the first one. Save story here. Everything except for the first one. And removing the brackets. So now we have this. And if I save this, refresh, we have two wonderful data sets here. So now it's time to work with checkboxes, and the checkboxes need to do two things. First of all, I want them to be highlighted with a color, but not on the checkbox, but just on the color of the text. So we should be able to get the red sales plus the red color of our border will be applied on the checkboxes. And secondly, we want to make sure that if we click on it, it will respond very similarly to this style here. So let's start to work on that. So the first thing what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create two checkboxes, and well, we can do it up in HTML, but I want it in JavaScript so it's fully automated and soft coded. So we'll just loop through it and know how many checkboxes to make. So the first thing what we're going to do here is, let's say here a function, and let's say here the checkbox. Basically, this is the creating the checkboxes. Then I'm going to say a constant, and then here, well, I guess what we need is a proper div. So what we will do here, I'll just put it here up. I'll say here div, and this div will have a ID equal to legend, and that's it. So it's a blank div, but in here we're going to insert or append, that's the right term, append the checkboxes. So we're going to say a constant, and then we can say a legend equals document dot get element by ID. And then here, of course, the reference is to the legend ID that we have here above, we just created. And then, once we have this, what we want to do next is I want to start to put in. And how we will look this, well, we do in here, in this constant, we can have this data sets here. And we go here, which we call a for each method. So for every data set we have, it will loop and create a pattern. So that's what we're going to do here. So I'm going to say here, my chart. Because why my chart? We go from my chart. And then from my chart, we go to the data, and etc. etc. So we go very deep immediately in there. So we say from my chart dot data sets. And then we're going to say here for each. So basically, this is the array with the data sets. And then for each, and then we will say here, double parentheses, and then we say here for every data set, basically, if we reference to this, every one of these data sets, that's basically this here is equal to that now. And then we're going to say here next what I want to have is here in the index. So that might be important later on. So if we have this, what I want to do here is the following. So the first thing will be just to say console log and show what is data set. Well, data set is just a shortcut or shorthand for this. So I save this now, refresh here, open up developer tab. You can see here, of course, so why it doesn't work? Because we didn't activate this function. So I'm going to just activate that. There we are. So now you can see here we get two specific data sets here. Beautiful. And we can see here all the information that we can extract as well. So that's what we're going to do now. So what we will do here is we're going to say here add checkbox, and what will be in here, we're going to say here let. I'm going to use here let because we're going to loop through this, and it's probably quite useful to have then the let term. I'm going to say here checkbox equals document dot create element. And what is the element we're going to create? Not checkbox, no, we're going to put an input. Because remember, in HTML you will say input, then we say type equals checkbox. So that's why we're going to use here input as the element. So then once we did that, we can then specify the attributes. And in this case, one of the attributes is a type. So we're going to say your checkbox, so input, or a checkbox basically, that's the input. The checkbox.type equals, and in this case here, I think double quotation would be more, or sorry, not double single quotation would be appropriate here. And then we're going to say your checkbox, semicolon. Next, what I want to do here is the data set, or maybe the checkbox name. So I'm going to say checkbox dot name, and the checkbox dot name is, as you can see here, we have here the items. We will look through all of these, but we can get here the label. So how does it work? Well, we have data set, which is the entire item here, every individual one, and then dot label to extract specifically that. So we're going to say data set dot label. All right. So once we have this, I will later on continue on with this, but what I want to do first is to make sure that this works, so you can see it visually. So what we're going to do here now is, here we have the legend item, and we have here now the checkbox, and we're going to say this dot. And then what we're going to say here is, we're going to say append child. So what we're really doing is, this is the parent, which is correct, and then the child would be the item that is nested within that div, or in this legend ID. This is a div with the ID name of legend. So within here, what I want to nest is the inputs, or the checkboxes. So I'm going to copy this checkbox, put it in here. If I save this now, and just refresh, you will see here now we start to have something. But of course, it's not really fully active, but you can see here the name, red cells, and we have also black cells. So it starts to recognize something. And now we have this visual, it's become easier for us to show and tell, makes it more easier for you to comprehend what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do here, next one is, I want to give this, well, let's say value. Our checkbox has no value yet, as you can see here, it only has the name and then the checkbox type. So what we can say here is checkbox dot value, and for this value, I'm going to grab here the index, which is by default here built in. So it will look through it, and the first index is 0 and the second one will be 1. So that's very useful for us. The next thing what I want to do here is I want to give it an ID. So I'm going to say checkbox dot ID and equal, and then what I'm going to do is here is a template literal. What I want to here, I want to grab basically the label name, and then what I want to have here is to add up, or basically not only that is, I guess we can do here the data set. That's this one here. Let's copy this data set here. Or sorry, I'm confusing myself. Let's use a text of data set, and then I want to put in here the index number. That's this one here. And that's why I'm using here template literals, which are backticks, because I want to have an easy way of concatenation. So basically what here says the data set 0, and then the next one will be data set index 1. So once we have this, there we are. Finally, what I want to do is, because when we show them, we want to make sure that if they're shown, it should be checked. So by default, they are already checked. So I say here checkbox dot checked equals true. So if I save this now, refresh, you can see here now they are automatically already checked. And if I look very carefully, we have an ID name and we have a value as well. This value will be very important for us in the ID name as well. But what we are missing still is a label. So let's add up here a label. So what I'm going to do here now is, let's add label. And the label will be very straightforward. Let's say label here equals, and then what we're going to do here, exactly the same, document dot create element, but in this case the element is called label. So once we did that, and then what I want to do here is I want to make sure that the label 4, that's a common thing as well, is when you click on the white space here, that it will trigger still the item. This is very common in HTML, so I don't have to explain it too deeply. But this is just basically label.html4. That's the attribute. And then we're going to say here, I can do here backticks, and just copy this entire chunk of code here. So I'm using here template details again with the backticks. Once I did that, I want to have finally the color. Or if I save this now, I should have here something. Oh, nothing yet. Alright. So what I should have here is probably a text as well. Well, we can do that later on. Or what we could do is, let's add up. We're going to say label.append child. So what we need to do here is basically add a text node. So what I'm going to do here, add text node before we even continue on. I'm going to say here, let text node equals, or maybe label text, that's even better. Label text equals document dot create, and I'm not element, but we say here text node, because we want to only add up here the text, which is basically this specific item here. It's just from the data set to label that we have here as well. We can just copy this here, put it in there, then we get this. And then of course here we need to append that. I'm going to add that up in here. Save this, refresh. Alright, so right now what is happening is the label is, or this text is not appending properly to the label. And let's see what's going on, or why is that. So the label append, that one is the text node. So what we need to do here is to check where is this label being attached to. As you can see here, the label is not being attached anywhere because it needs to be added up in here. So we're going to put in the label or the legend, and I'm going to say append child label. This is very important because the order structure is important. So what I want to do, I want to put in first the checkbox and then the text behind it. So if I do this now, I will have the text first and then the checkbox, as you can see here. So I don't want this, so I want to change this order with that one. If I save that, refresh, there we are. So now we have that. You have both ways depending on what you want to do on this. So now we have this one here. We could even give it maybe some CSS. I'll just do very basic here. I'm going to say here ID legend, and then if it's in the legend, we're going to have here the I guess the label. In the label, what I want to do here, maybe padding 5 pixels. Save that, refresh. There we are. So we have this, and all right, interesting. I'm not able to click on this. We're going to see here the label. All right, the 4 is missing, and I know we had that one if I'm not mistaken. For the label dot HTML4. HTML. Make sure you spell this correctly. HTML. Save that, refresh. Now if I click on this, as you can see here, it responds nicely. So as you can see, and if I would search for this, for dataset 0. Beautiful. So now we have this, and we're now very close to completing it. But we have now the first function. This is the created checkbox. So the next function, I will put it outside of this because I don't want to put it within there. I'm going to say here new function. And this function will be basically the checkbox effect. So I'm going to say checkbox effect. And then within here, well, we have a lot of work to do as well. So the first thing I need to do here is making sure that we recognize that we click on this, it will recognize this. So I'm going to say here constant dataset. Remember we have the ID dataset 0, which is the ID that we have in the labels that we are named. This one here specifically. As you can see here, dataset ID is dataset 0 or dataset 1. So then we say document dot get element by ID, and then what is the ID name? Well, data set 0. Next, I'm going to copy this, put it in there, say here data set number 1. So then we basically are able to pinpoint this or grab this from the HTML element or document. So now we have this. What I want to do next then is then to create a so-called trigger effect, which we'll call an add event listener. So I'm going to say here, when we click on data set 0, so when we click on this, or more specifically, an add event listener, and this listener is triggered on the change, not on click, but on change, because as you can see here, if I click on this, I did not click on the checkbox, which is the ID, but it changes even if I click on this part because of the for. So this is very important. That's why it's on change. And then we say here the following: this event or element that we clicked on, I'm going to put in here this arrow, and then what we're going to say here is checkbox effect. All right. And then what I want to do here is I want to pinpoint, first of all, the canvas, which is my chart. This one here, basically. I will grab this, but this is the constant that contains multiple objects. So later on, I'm going to pinpoint the specific object that we need. But I'm going to grab this one here. Put in here my chart. And secondly, what I want to do here is the E for the element event. So once I have this semicolon, I'm going to say here console log. And what we could do here, for example, I would say a chart. So the chart is referenced to my chart. And then we have here the E, and the E is a reference to the element and click event. So I'm going to grab this one. If I say this here, save that, refresh. Oh, there we are. All right, we're getting an error. So let's double check the error. Malformed arrow function, sorry. We have this one here. Probably we forgot a comma. There we are. Save that. Refresh. All right. And then I click on this, and I click again. Nothing happens. So we say here on change, and then event on this. Then we have this, and we have, of course, that one. So this is supposed to work correctly. Oh, which one did we click on? Maybe we have to click on this. Sorry. I didn't trigger this one yet. As you can see here, we only work on dataset 0, which would mean the red label. So as I click on this, look what we get. We get all the information here, the element. We get here even the target. So we have the target here that we can grab. But also we have, if I scroll down here somewhere down, you will see here the value. And then you have to look here. Maybe is it on the target? It's supposed to be here if I'm not mistaken. Target, letter V for victory. Alright, triple dots. Click on that because there's more hidden. Scroll down here and I see here value number 0, which is correct because it was number 0 as the value. So we have this now. So the next thing what I want to do here then is now we can just grab this target. Let's grab this value, the target dot value. So exactly the same here. We were in the target object. If I do this now and I refresh and I click here, you can see here we get 0. Click again, we get 0, and there we are. So with this, of course, we can do the second one later on as well. But let's start to work on this now. So we have this here. So what I want to do here now is the following. I need to check now here. Let's see, we're going to create the function here. But then what I want to do here is this. I'm going to say here constant index, because basically we got now the index value. Put it in there. And then next, what I want to say here, I'm going to say if. I'm going to grab here in the chart, this item here, which is basically the my chart. If in my chart, we're going to say dot is data set visible, and then we put in here the index. This here is a specific command from Chart.js. So what we're really doing here now is we're going to create a comparison, and if something is visible, if that is the case, then what we want to do is when we click on it, we should hide it, and if it's not visible, it should appear. So it's very similar to this here. So let's start to work on that. I'm going to say here this index if, and I'm going to say here, or I'm going to just say here chart dot hide, there we go, which one? The index. Secondly, what I want to do here, else, if that is not the case, or if it is basically not visible, or depending on what it is, what the state is, then I'm going to say here, like that. So if I save this now, we should have now a working model. Save that, refresh. You can see they're checked. So if they're both checked, they should be visible. And if I click on this, hidden. And you can see here nicely, Chart.js already recognizes even this on the legend. So you can see here, if I click on this, but this one doesn't work yet. But if I do this, it will not make any mistake and it understands it. So now we have this here, and all we need to do here is to duplicate this. Just say here index number 1. Save that, because this here already loops through this, so it should work nicely. Click on that. There we are. Click this, click that. Now we hide them all. Basically, we can now hide the entire legend. So what I want to do as a final exercise is just to add up one more item. See if this works nicely. If we have a new color sales, and then we're going to make this 200, 100, and this number 50. And the only goal here is just to give some different colors. Save them. Refresh. Alright, so we get a new color sales here. You can see here this works, but of course this doesn't work yet. Why not? Well, we have to add up here. We could probably even make this a independent functionality as well. For that, I would just leave it for now. I will not cover that, but I'll just make it like this. But you should be able to figure that one out eventually. So save, refresh. Now we have this. Oh, I'm surprised that this doesn't work. Alright. Oh, of course. Make sure this is number 2. Everything should be 2. Dataset number 2. Dataset number 2. And then here dataset again number 2. Refresh. Click. There we are. Click. There we are. I click. There we are. So if I would hide now the legend, let's go here into our options. I'm going to say here plugins. I'm going to say here not the skill, sorry, legend. And in the legend, I'm going to say here display false. Comma, save, refresh. Now it's hidden, and now we have this item here, and this works very, very nice, and it's a very intuitive item. You could even change these colors as well, but that's more a CSS design item instead of a Chart.js topic. So if you enjoyed this video and maybe you want to learn a bit more about how to customize a legend, in that case I also recommend you this specific video here, how to make a custom legend in Chart.js that covers as well different items of Chart.js.